Philip Prospero, Prince of Asturias, was the first son of Philip IV of Spain and Mariana of Austria to survive infancy. Philip IV had no male heir since the death of Balthasar Charles, his son by his first wife, Elisabeth of France, 11 years before, and as Spain's strength continued to ebb, the issue of succession had become a matter of fervent and anxious prayer. Birth. After Balthasar Charles's early demise, Philip was left with his daughter Maria Theresa as heir presumptive. In early 1657, astrologers assured Philip that another child was to be born to him, and it would be a boy who would live. A strict and devout Roman Catholic, Philip ate nothing but eggs on the first day of the vigil of the presentation of the Virgin, in hopes of his wife really delivering a male child. Indeed, at 11:30 in the morning on November 28 of the same year, Mariana of Austria delivered a son. She soon fell sick of the birthing fever, but nobody seemed to mind. They were all rejoicing upon the birth of a male heir. Baron Wevo, a chronicler of the time, wrote of this rejoicing. Baptism. Following Roman Catholic custom, the infant was called only the prince until his baptism. Astrologers predicted nothing but greatness for his future, while Philip was still unsure that he had not thanked God enough for this immense joy. In a letter to his friend Maria de Agreda, he wrote that the newborn babe is doing well, but also made a reference to the bitter memory of his eldest son's demise. On December 6, 1657, Philip rode into the decorated streets of Madrid, where the preparations for the prince's baptism were almost ready. Dances, masks and music greeted the king. The baptism took place exactly 1 week later on December 13, performed by the Archbishop of Toledo. The holy water was brought from the Jordan River by some friars who had recently returned from Jordan. The same Baron Wevo wrote that the prince screamed lustily when he was baptized, and, attracted by the loud, resonant voice, the king, who was looking through the jalousies, exclaimed, "Ah, that does sound well. The house smells of a man now." The christening cost Philip 600,000 ducats. However, due to generations of inbreeding, Philip Prospero was severely epileptic. The inbreeding was so widespread in his case that all of his 8 great-grandparents were descendants of Joanna of Castile and Archduke Philip of Austria, heir apparent to the throne. Philip Prospero's birth was greeted with much joy, not only because of the child's gender, but also because it put to an end to various dynastic quarrels that would come to be after his daughters' marriages. Thus, in 1658, Philip Prospero was sworn in as heir of his father and Prince of Asturias. Nevertheless, he did not enjoy good health and constantly had to carry an amulet with him, an amulet which is present in Velázquez's painting of him. By 1659, the prime ministers of France and Spain had been negotiating an end to the country's hostilities for 2 years. Now that Spain had a male heir, she could agree to consolidate the peace by marrying the king's eldest child, Maria Theresa, to the French King Louis XIV. The outcome of the negotiations was the Treaty of the Pyrenees, which established France as the world's new dominant power. Portrait. The first portrait of Philip Prospero to come down to us was painted by Velázquez in 1659, the year Philip felt he could safely agree to the terms of the treaty with France. This portrait and one of Margaret Theresa were made that year for the Emperor Leopold I, the mother's brother and Margaret Theresa's future husband. In the painting, the prince appears to be around 3 years old. He stands before a rich black background, the blackness of which is repeated in his eyes. His wrist limply rests over the back of a child-sized chair in which lies an equally limp, contented spaniel. In Velázquez's honest depiction, the baby's eyes have a faint grey-blue-brown hollowness around them. His luminous face and hands and his white muslin smock are accented by the warm red of his gown and are a brightness against the subdued, somber background colors. but the painting directly admits the little boy's precarious health. From strings crisscrossing his chest and waist hang metal bells and at least 2 protective lucky amulets, a cornicello, and on the string across his left shoulder a black object, likely a fig hand carved of jet. By contrast, nearly 30 years earlier Balthasar painted a robust Balthasar Charles at age 2 or 3 with staff, sword, exuberant sash and plumed hat. This is not a political picture, other than that it shows that the impossible hopes of a nation are depending on a wavering little spirit, which itself is depending on luck and fate. Death. Philip Prospero had been ill for quite some time before his November 1661 death. He suffered from epilepsy and became ill frequently, probably due to having a very defective immune system from generations of inbreeding. The king even brought the relics of St. Diego of Alcala to the palace in hopes of curing his heir. On November 1, 1661, he died following a severe epileptic attack. 5 days later, Philip's youngest son and final child, Infancy Charles, was born. He would ascend the throne in 1665. Following Philip's death, Philip held himself indirectly responsible for his son's death, which is clear in a letter that he wrote to Sor Maria about Philip Prospero's death. Ancestry. Bibliography. Brown, Jonathan, Ingas, Robert. Italian and Spanish art, 1600 to 1750. Sources and documents. Evanston, Northwestern University Press. ISBN 978081011-1065-6. Halleckser, Stephen. Between Exaltation and Infamy. Female Mystics in the Golden Age of Spain. Oxford, Oxford University Press. ISBN 978-019-514863-3. Hume, Martin. The Court of Philip IV, Spain in Decadence. London, Evelyn Nash. Stradling, R.A. Philip IV and the Government of Spain, 1621 to 1665. Cambridge, Cambridge University Press. ISBN 978-0-52-153055-2.